3, 2, 1, go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Pacifica Institute's book launch, A Genocide in the Making, Erdoğan Regime's Crackdown on the Gülen Movement by Bulent Keneş. And Richard Anderson will be our discussant today from UCLA Political Science Department.
3, 2, 1, go.
He teaches a graduate seminar on discourse analysis and undergraduate seminar on political language and voting rights in the United States. He's also taught Russian politics, introduction to world politics, analytical approaches to comparative politics, and a course on politics in Western Europe as part of an annual summer overseas program offered by UCLA in Europe, which he initiated and brought to fruition. So the ground is yours, Dr. Anderson.
Well, thank you very much, Attila. I'm happy to introduce Bulent Keneş, who's published a book recently on the Erdogan regime's crackdown on the Gülen movement. Dr. Keneş is a journalist who is the former editor of the English language version of the Turkish newspaper Zaman, and who is now active in the study of populism, centered in Brussels, and founding a new institute for that purpose. Dr. Keneş, I welcome you, and I offer you the floor.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my views and findings that I detailed in my recently released book about what have happening in Turkey for the last few years through targeting and persecuting the members and alleged members of the Gülen movement. We know the fact that the cruelty of man to his fellow man is not new. It is as old as the history of mankind. Mass killings, ethnic cleansing, massacres, and genocide continue to cause irrecoverable injuries to the collective conscience. Although there were some intellectual efforts to prosecute the perpetrators of these massacres and genocides in the past, it was only in the 1990s that the international law against the crime of genocide produced some legal results and penalties. However, what is more important than the prosecution and punishment of the crime of genocide is its prevention by early recognition of process that leads to it. Experts working on genocide emphasize that some mechanisms could be established on the subject. As one of the prominent experts, Gregory Stanton, describes the process that leads to genocide as predictable, and since it is predictable, it is also preventable. In the book, I tried to construct an objective framework by integrating a legal definition of genocide in UN Genocide Convention, late academic Hasan Kakar's studies on the subject, and 10 stages of genocide, which was formalized by Stanton. And I tried to apply this framework to widespread and systematic persecutions aimed at members of the Gülen movement in Turkey. The clear picture, you can go on slide. The clear picture emerged as a result of this work reveals that all the crimes and acts contained in the academic descriptions and legal definition of the crime of genocide have already been carried out by Erdogan regime against members of the Gülen movement. As of today, millions of people have been victimized by the mass persecution campaign, which the Erdogan regime accelerated after the controversial coup attempt in 2016. The systematic witch hunt, widespread hate speech, and ongoing persecution of Gülen movement members have made conditions in Turkey ripe for a deliberate and systematic genocide. Actually, the Erdogan regime has made significant progress in the direction of uprooting Gülen movement and has made its complete implementation only a matter of time. Dear friends, Hasan Kakar argued that there are some preconditions for the implementation of genocide in a country. According to him, these preconditions require, first, a national culture that doesn't place a high value on human life. Second, a totalitarian society with its assumed superior ideology. Third, members of the dominant society must perceive their potential victims as less than human or non-human. Fourth, a strong centralized authority and bureaucratic organization. Fifth, the perpetrators need also pathological individuals and criminals. In the book, it was discussed in detail to what extent the historical, sociological, cultural, political, institutional, and conjunctural conditions in Turkey meet these preconditions. However, I can say here that all these conditions are unfortunately present in today's Turkey. As is well known, the most comprehensive definition of genocide is made in Article 2 of UN Genocide Convention. According to this convention, the realization of just one of the following acts is legally sufficient to be defined as a crime of genocide. In convention's words, genocide means, in quote, any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. First, killing members of the group. Second, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Third, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Fourth, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the groups. Fifth, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. I can say that at least 2 of these 5 acts have been realized completely, and 3 of them have been realized to various extents in regard of the Gülen movement. So genocide, as described in the convention, is in the process of full implementation today in Turkey against the Gülen movement, which constitutes a sui generis religious and social group with its distinguishing characteristics. Even if the movement does not define itself so, it has been deliberately framed and stigmatized by Erdogan regime as a different and homogeneous socio-religious group. Let me underline and elaborate a bit these 2 acts of genocide realized completely in Turkey targeting Gülen movement members. The predominant part of the persecution carried out by the Erdogan regime correspond to the act of causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. The Gülen movement members have been subjected all the acts that are considered criminal acts under this article, including torture, rape, death threats, and sexual assault, solely because of their affiliation with the group. The people have been stigmatized and subjected to these persecutions not because they are guilty of any crime, but due to their ties to the Gülen movement. Moreover, it can be obviously seen that members of the Gülen movement have been completely exposed to deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Deliberate and systematic crimes committed by the Erdogan dictatorship, such as mass detentions and arrests, the confiscation of properties of thousands of people, media organizations, and institutions, mass dismissals of people from public service, and condemning them to a civil death correspond to this act of genocide. Moreover, it is also obvious that 8 out of 10 stages formalized by Gregory Stanton have also been carried out completely. These stages are classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, and persecution. It has also been observed that the stage of extermination has already begun, despite on an individual level. Even the stage of denial has started, as in the cases of people who were killed under torture. Dear friends, although the systematic crimes against the Gülen movement meet the academic and legal definition of genocide in many ways, the most destructive dimension of genocide is the physical extermination. And thankfully, it has not yet been implemented systematically. However, the realization of extermination is just a matter of time. As genocide experts warn, hate speech and incitement together increase risks for genocide, especially when they come from the top down in authoritarian regimes, exactly as they have been happening in Turkey right now. Genocide experts also advise that when political leaders use explicit pseudo-medical and epidemiologic metaphors such as microbes, field, cancer, typhoid, and rats to dehumanize victim groups, it is prudent to regard such language as an urgent warning sign of an imminent genocide. Unfortunately, in our case, this stage has long passed. Erdogan, by targeting the Gülen movement, has for quite some time been using hundreds of hate expressions, including viruses, cancers, tumors, vampires, leeches, bloodsuckers, bacteria, and microbes. However, since the widespread physical extermination process through systematic killings has not begun, it is not yet too late. As a conclusion, I can say that a possible genocide openly targeting members of the Gülen movement is not only predictable, it can also easily be seen with its concrete signs. Since all the indicators in Turkey show that the risk of a genocide increases with every passing day, this alarming situation requires the urgent mobilization of international community, the institutions and powers that bear responsibility for the prevention of such process before grave consequences are realized. In this regard, my book may be kindly accepted as a timely warning. Thank you very much for listening to me and your patience. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. You know, the one thing that I think is interesting about, there are many things that are interesting about this book, but one thing that really strikes me immediately is the numbers on this chart are, and which are amplified in the book. Although these, if I remember correctly, these numbers are somewhat larger than the numbers in the book, since there have presumably been some more arrests. But the question that always arises about numbers is, how do you know them? I mean, how do you know that 160,000 people have been dismissed from their jobs?
Yeah, you know that.
Bulent, before you answer the question, Richard, can you take the slide off the screen so that you two appear in the on the screen, please?
Oh, okay, sure. Stop sharing.
Thank you.
The one thing though is I'd like to be able to see it myself, but never mind. Oh, I see what's happened. Okay.
Actually, for a certain date, these numbers were given by the government, especially Interior Minister every week released some documents and saying that this week we conduct this amount of operations against this kind of groups, they say terror organizations, and they give these numbers. And as Stockholm Center for Freedom that we established together with my colleagues when we reached to Stockholm, also follow the detentions, arrests, torture cases, and conspicuous deaths under torture, under detention or prison. And we also followed some other institutions like turkeypurge.org based in Canada. And we compare our numbers and our statistics and their numbers, and we try to exactly determine how many people detained, how many people arrested and put in prison, how many of them released, how many people kidnapped, and how many people lost their lives in suspicious situations, you know. So we couldn't say that this is the highly scientific and exact numbers, but because of the peculiar situation in Turkey, actually nobody knows the exact numbers. This maybe just give an idea that at least this amount of people detained, at least this amount of people arrested, at least this amount of people tortured or killed. For instance, if we look at arrested journalists who are in prison, we could find different numbers from different press freedom organizations like Reporters Without Borders or Committee for Protecting Journalists or Amnesty International. Especially CPJ and the RSF's numbers are quite different. And we as exiled journalists found the most bigger number who in prison as journalists. When we look at closely to the cases of the detentions and arrests, we realize that even RSF and CPJ, Committee for Protecting Journalists, have no a strong methodological ground to determine how many journalists in prison. For instance, they accept some journalists who are representative, a provincial representative of Zaman Daily in Anatolia as journalists who are in prison, but they don't accept another province representative as journalists. So we decide that our methodology to determine how many journalists in prison is much better than both RSF and CPJ, because we know the ground much better than any other international organization. And we have still, despite all the obstacles, sources in Turkey. And much well-informed sources than other international human rights organizations or press freedom organizations. But we never claim that all numbers even represent the exact situation, because the channels of reaching information and documents is not open in Turkey. Microphone.
It's always very difficult in these situations of mass arrests and mass slaughters to get exact numbers. And the real question is, how do you get the bulk numbers? And, you know, these numbers are really quite impressive. I mean, there are, if I'm not mistaken, about 80 million people in Turkey. And I learned from your book that there are something like 230,000 spaces in Turkey's prison cells. And if so, then these 77,000 arrests or imprisonments is about a third of Turkey's prison capacity.
Yeah, it's a fact. Actually, it's a fact. So the Turkish government give a herald, you know, a kind of herald to people, saying that we will build 39 new prisons around across the country, and it is a fact because the Turkish government 2 times since controversial coup attempt in 2016, 2 times they how could I say, make a pardon for the first time for 40,000 people. This is ordinary criminal people, and in the second time the 90,000 people. This is the thefts, drug users, drug sellers, rapers, and other kind of criminals, to just open new places for people from both the Gülen movement and from the Kurdish political movement, the opposition movement. Even if these acts, still there is a huge complaints about the lack of places in prisons because, for instance, 28 people should be kept in a place and ward just for 8 people. 28 people in a place of 8 people, or 40 people for 10 people, you know. So it is a problem. It's a real problem. Turkish prisons capacity is not sufficient to arrest all these people. And another aspect is that we see that we have seen that Turkish government conduct detention campaigns from period to period. It is not a linear line. It's a fluctuations. So they prepare new places for the detainees, and they conduct new operations. And if they have no places to keep them, they stop the operations, just because of the restrictions of the prisons. So people wonder about, just after the coup attempt, tens of thousands of women and men, innocent men, detained, and then the pace of the detentions slowed down. And now recently, in 2000, at the end of the 2020 and the early 2021, again, the detention campaigns increased. People wonder why, just because there is no new places to put them in, you know. So we know that even this fact shows that these people are not criminal. These people are not terrorists. These people just dissent, and these people just oppose to Erdogan regime. So they just waiting their time to be detained and put in the prison.
Well, that raises another interesting question. How did they decide who to arrest?
Pardon me, I couldn't understand.
How did the Erdogan people decide who they should arrest?
Yeah, you know that people are doing ordinary things in daily life, like watching TV, opening a bank account, or closing a bank account, transferring money from a family member to another family member, or making donations for charity organizations, or sending your children to school, private or another kind of charter school. That's ordinary things, you know. They make some criteria to determine who are affiliated with the Gülen movement. If you, a subscriber to Zaman Daily, you are directly being accused of being a terrorist. If you following certain TV channels, or not decide to not follow certain TV channel, they can determine. They say that, okay, you are Gülen followers, so you are a criminal. If you send your children to certain schools which are affiliated with the Gülen movement, you are directly being accepted as terrorists. Whether we are a housewife, or whether we are a teacher or a shopkeeper, engineer, no matter. If you commit any crime or not, it is not so important. Even they said that it is so comic actually, especially in bureaucracy and military, if you have extraordinary talents, like language capacity, if you speak English, French, or more than one foreign language, they are saying that these people are suspicious of being Gülenist, because they have extraordinary capacity. If you are so successful in your duty, even in military or bureaucracy or judiciary, If you were bestowed some awards from international organizations or national organizations, even they are using these successes as a criteria to claim that these people are from Gülen movement. If you are successful in examinations, for instance, state-organized examinations to enter university or to find a position in public sector, if you are so successful, you are suspicious to be being Gülenist. Because they said that these people are well organized, well educated, and they are well prepared for any position. So success turned to be a kind of not bliss, but how could I say, a kind of damning for anybody.
Well, you know, an effort like this suggests to me that it took a lot of time to organize because you had to make all those lists. And then I really wonder, were these arrests a response to the coup in 2016? Or is this carrying out a plan which had already been prepared and the coup was an opportunity to start it?
Yeah, exactly. There is a link or correlation between or relation between coup and the people who have been detained or arrested or purged from their positions in public sector. But these relations is not like people think. These relations is that this list of people have already been done just much before the coup attempt. From different circles in, we say, deep state circles, they prepared these lists. They profile people both in public sector and private sector, and the bureaucracy, judiciary, police, and the army. And they, my approach is that they pave a way for a fake coup attempt. They could organize that, a false flag coup, to realize their intentions to purge a certain segments of the society from official duties and seize their properties, their influence in the society. Could you imagine that maybe 40,000 teachers purged from their duties and 22,000 teachers who are in private schools and university preparation courses, their licenses of teaching cancelled, you know. How could you imagine that teachers, shopkeepers, housewives, journalists, academicians, everybody, you know, from any walk of life, any sector, could be a part of the coup. But just because of the coup, they are using this as a pretext. And in the first hours of the coup, in the night of 16th of July, because after the midnight, they purge more than 2,300 judges and prosecutors. It is impossible to determine in hours this amount of judges and prosecutors allegedly have affiliated with Gülen movement, because this list prepared much before then the controversial coup attempt, and the judges and prosecutors nothing to do with the coup, you know. But this is a chance. So Erdogan said that this is a gift from God. Even at the heatest minutes of the coup attempt, could you think that the target of the coup said that this is a bliss of God, this is a gift from God? Yes, they prepared the lists together with some Eurasianist, ultra-nationalist groups, and they prepared the ground for the false flag coup, and using coup as a pretext to purge both public sector opposition and private sector in private sector. And also the people who has no relations with the private sector or public sector, like ordinary women and even the youngs, you know.
Okay, well, I mean, there's also, if I may just briefly, there's another way to look at the coup, that if there was a big preparation going on, then certainly some people were going to find out about it. And you could understand why people in the military might have wanted to step in and preempt the impending purge that was being prepared, since they would have found out. So maybe the coup was actually real. That doesn't mean that Gülen himself, who was opposed to coups, or that the movement was behind it, or that the people arrested were participating in it. I do want to say we have 3 questions, and so far, and can you see the questions? Bulent, can you see the questions?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes,
you might
yes,
answer. You might answer them one at a time. Start with the first one, and maybe since other people probably can't see it, maybe I'll read them. To both of us, what is happening in Turkey has happened many times before. Each time there were different waves like nationalism, secularism, and now Islamism. How to stop it? What are the fundamentals of stopping this kind of behavior? That's also a question I have, is what can be done?
It is a $1 million question, but there is no an easy answer for that. Unfortunately, this kind of situations have no easy solution. I had written a news article and columns for a daily seized by Erdogan. Now I have a indictment about that. Just analyzing the situation, how Turkey could manage to go out of this terrible situation. Unfortunately, Erdogan closed all the democratic channels and judiciary channels to hand over power to opposition. Because he and his close circles committed lots of crimes, both in national and international scale. So he has no luxury to give up the power. So this is not only a issue of Islamism. This is a issue of a mafia type organization that occupied the public positions and the political power. And coincidentally, these people are also Islamists. Being Islamist is itself a problematic thing, you know, because they don't believe in democracy, they don't believe in pluralism, they don't believe in democratic processes and institutions, values and principles. And these Islamists also criminals. They are corrupt. They involved in numbers of criminal and terrorist events in neighboring countries like Syria, Egypt, Libya, and they have close relations and ties with radical Islamist terror organizations like ISIL, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah. So it is not easy to rescue a country which was occupied by a criminal Islamist group. It is not easy. Through the democracy, through the ballot box, through the judicial process, I think it is impossible. So, especially the case of Turkey, about the case of Turkey, I am so pessimist. And I wrote in that article just before the coup attempt, I said that there is no way out for Turkey other than, unfortunately, I said unfortunately, a coup, civil war, or totally collapse of the state, a failed state kind of thing. It is not, there is no good way of out from this situation. I have actually no idea, but so pessimist about the developments in Turkey.
Yeah, let me also respond to that a little bit. I'm as pessimistic as you are. There is, in fact, nothing that can prevent these things. If we look at Donald Trump, his rise to power was a reaction to a great victory for human rights in the United States, which was the election of Barack Obama, and a great recovery from the economic crisis, which, as bad as and as sort of ill-designed as the recovery was, did help people who are denied the opportunities that other Americans have. Well, if you try to help communities that are marginalized, which is, you know, the Gülen movement calls itself the service or the community, and it tries to be an operation which reaches out to people whose chances aren't as good. It shares the wealth with other Turks. Well, if you share wealth with people who are poor, you prevent people who are in a better position from keeping as much of it for themselves. And so you get these counter movements like Erdogan or like Trump. And that's a consequence of trying to do something good. All you can do is try to care for the victims, care about the victims. And the one hope you have, which is always a valid hope and always ultimately comes true, is that by destroying their enemies, these movements like Erdogan's movement tear themselves apart, since their only basis of cohesion is that they are so hostile towards something like the Gülen movement. And once it's defeated, then what's the point of they turn on each other and these regimes ultimately collapse? But it's a long, slow, painful, and appalling process. So yeah. Pessimism is exactly the right word for how to feel of it. The second question is much like the first. There's a wave of populism around the world. What is the best way to deal with populist leaders popping up? And I think we both agree there isn't one. It's inevitably going to happen. Except that you've got to care, you've got to mobilize, you have to defend the ideals of liberty. And I think that's what you said. And you have to take every opportunity to put pressure. The next question is, Bulent, do you see an upcoming secularist wave in Turkey after this Islamist government? If so, do you expect them to be as brutal as the Erdogan regime?
Yeah, there is different various scenarios about post-Erdogan era. Of course, Erdogan would not be stay in the power infinitely. He has a lifespan, and this lifespan will completed one day in the next future. But there is, of course, there is a deep wave of secularism in Turkey right now, like Iran. After the oppression of Mullah regime in Iran, you know, the numbers of people, millions of people react against Islamic ideology and Islam itself. And atheism or deism started to be widespread. In current Turkey, the same tendency is reported almost every day, especially from religious circles, saying that the young generation have no interest in Islam anymore. So this shows also a kind of improvement in secular understanding in Turkey. This is a part of story, and I look at this development as positive development, because I think the secularism is the pillar of democracy. If the more the people tend to be secular, the more the people will do a democratic regime in a country. But the other other side of the story is terrible, because I appreciate secularism, but not ultra secularists. In Turkey, there is a strong, powerful circle. We call them as laicist, not secular, laicist, and secularist, ultra secularist. The old guard Kemalists, they still have certain power in military, judiciary, and higher bureaucracy. And if there is a kind of anti-democratic intervention to Erdogan regime, it will come from these segments of the power. But this will not bring an open society for Turkey and a full-fledged democracy for Turkey, or a better rule of law or supremacy law, or better conditions for freedom for people in Turkey. Maybe it will be in the same volume or higher volume oppression in the hands of this ultra-secularist intervention. This is a scenario, but my personal analysis is that Erdogan is now a kind of omnipotent, in an omnipotent position in political terms. So I think Erdogan and his circle could easily push back any attempt from this secularist, ultra-secularist circles. So we have to think about Erdogan and Erdogan's oppression much more than anything related to secularism, whether they are ultra-secularist or, the ordinary secularists are always welcome. No problem.
The third question, again, is along these lines. Can the United States do something with other democratic countries to restore civil rights to Turkey? Why don't you take a crack at that? I may comment on that a bit too.
The November elections in United States, I shared my opinion in Twitter numbers of times, and I said that these elections is the most important elections in democracy history. Either Biden win or Trump won, it's no matter. The elections in United States, those last elections, is so crucial for democracy, for freedoms and liberties, for human rights, both positive way or negative way. Fortunately, it evolved in positive way and Trump lost. If Biden defeated by Trump, I couldn't imagine that American system, how American system turned to be a kind of new Turkey, in the first term, Trump damaged a lot, give a lot damage to the system, but he couldn't do whatever he want. He couldn't destroy whole judicial system, whole decentralized system or check and balance system in or separation of power system in United States. But if he could be successful to win the elections, I have feared that he could do much deeper damage, give much deeper damage to American system, and maybe it will have terrible results. With Biden's success, at least Trump's destruction stop. Now it is time to renovate international democracy, American democracy again. Of course, I know that Trump gone, but Trumpism stay in the US. But it is better to not have Trump now than to have. It will be deeper and deeper, you know. So it is a chance for also the countries and nations like Turkey, Egypt, and other nations under oppression of autocrats. Biden's diplomacy, promising that they follow human rights criteria, democratic criteria in their diplomacy. So it is a chance for Turkey, but I am not so optimistic. It is you know, a real politic that and transactional relations always work much stronger than idealist relations. Anyway, Biden is much better than Trump's administration, but we should wait and see how much he and Harris could do for the sake of democratization and improving the standards of human rights and supremacy of law in the countries like Turkey, Egypt, India, China, Russia, Central and Eastern Europe. I am much more hopeful than before the elections, but still, I think we should wait and see the actions.
Now, you know, the good news about the U.S. and the other democratic countries is Turkey is a member of NATO, and through NATO or as NATO, they can put pressure on the Turks to respect human rights. Among other things, they can offer to evacuate people. They can offer to treat torture victims. They can't accuse Erdogan of torture because he won't give up the victims, but you can take them out. And if you do those things, then you bring about in some ways a better situation. But at the same time, because you don't want Turkey to leave NATO and you don't want to sacrifice the US bases in Turkey, there are really grave limits on what the United States and other democratic countries can do. Let's go on to the next question. Many Turks believe there is an alliance between Erdogan and the secularists against the Kurds and the Democrats. Do you agree with this claim? And if so, how long is this alliance going to continue?
Yeah, you know, as I said previously, there is different kind of secularists. There are secularists in Turkey now under oppression of Erdogan and ultra-secularists. Yes, we have also ultra-secularists. They collaborated with Erdogan against Kurds and Hizmet movement and the leftist opposition. It is a fact. Even I can easily argue that Erdogan collaborated with these ultra-secularists after 2013 corruption scandal against Gülen movement in order to assure this alliance between him and ultra-secularist groups. Erdogan had to give up a settlement process with the Kurds. So this ultra-secularists and Erdogan's main enemy, number one enemy, is the Gülen movement, the common enemy, I can say. But the Kurds are not the enemy, was not or were not enemy of Erdogan. Kurds were number one or number two enemy of these ultra-secularists. So Erdogan gave congestion to them to take their support against Gülen. So he became the enemy of the Kurds or Kurdish political movement. So I agree with that. There is a alliance or coalition between these ultra-secularists and Erdogan's Islamist regime. These ultra-secularists consist of the deep state entities like Ergenekon and also ultra-nationalist nationalist movement party of Devlet Bahçeli. They combine their forces against both Gülen movement and the Kurds. This is the agreement. This is the deal. But I think that this alliance will not survive infinitely because their perspective, Turkey, a perspective of their consideration or imagination for Turkey is not the same. Erdogan imagined a different Turkey. Ultra-nationalists imagine another Turkey, and these ultra-secularist powers consider or imagine totally different Turkey, and they will eventually clash. But even in this clash, Erdogan still in favorable position to win.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more question. And this question concerns people who are friends of the Hizmet movement, that is of the Gülen movement, who are not themselves Turks and are in the United States. So this question is asked, actually probably directed to you, but the people it's about are people like me. Anyway, what can those people in the United States do to make a difference to the situation in Turkey?
Yeah, Erdogan first win the battle, if we say battle, to manage perceptions. In Turkey, it was easy for him to do that because he directly controlled 95% of Turkish media, especially after he seized and closed media organizations affiliated with the Gülen movement and some other oppositional group. So he could easily manage the perceptions in Turkey about distant people and the Gülen movement and Kurdish people. But it is not easy for Erdogan to do in international arena. So he has done a lot to do that. He put millions or billions of dollars to manage the conception and perception of people abroad, but he is not successful. So I just suggest the friends of not the Gülen movement, the friends of Democrats, friends of peace lovers, friends of liberty lovers in Turkey could do anything to create an awareness about how kind of a regime Turkey has, and who are the victims, and how could they struggle against this tyranny. At least they give a moral support to people, and they could put pressure on their own administration to fine-tune or radically change their policies against Erdogan regime. Unfortunately, during the Trump era, we couldn't see an American administration who put pressure on Erdogan to make Turkey more open or more democratic. And we couldn't see, unfortunately, European Union, Aaron, and European capitals, European states, put pressure on Erdogan to respect human rights and freedoms of people. They prefer to appease Erdogan for their transactional relations, especially negotiating on the refugee problem. And Trump, I don't know how the listeners think about him, but I think he loves autocrats so much than the liberals or libertarians in other parts of the world. He loves North Korean leader Putin, Erdogan, Modi, Bolsonaro, you can, Xi Jinping. We have to change the mood by putting pressure on administration to change their relations, chemistry of their relations with Turkey. I am hopeful for Biden administration, but as I said, we should see the steps they will take. We were also hopeful, so hopeful about the Obama administration, but it became a kind of disappointment for all democratic circles in Turkey.
Well, I must say, you know, I am a friend of the Gülen movement in a sense, because for a long time, I've known one of their local representatives, and they've been friendly to me, and I'm friendly back. And in some sense, the real question is not what the friends of the movement can do, as much as it is what we all need to do, whether you're a friend of the movement or not. And one thing we can do is what we're doing right now. We're spreading information which the American public does not have about the real situation in Turkey and the scale of the violation of human rights to people in Turkey, those numbers that I was focusing on earlier. I mean, I think that's really the important point. A lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are being harmed. A lot of people are being damaged. And I think Americans don't know that. It shows up in the newspapers from time to time, but just the massive size of this problem, people aren't aware of. So the first thing to do is to inform the public. And, you know, somebody like me can sit and talk with somebody like Bulent, who actually knows what's going on, and so that people can hear us, and that helps some. The degree to which you can get change in American public policy, the crucial thing you have to remember is that Joe Biden has a lot on his plate. And in everything he does, he's having to scale back bits and pieces of it just in order to get anything at all. And, you know, people suffer in Turkey, people suffer in Russia, people suffer in Saudi Arabia, you know, there's
Myanmar now.
In Myanmar, so forth and so on. And all we can do is bring that to the forefront of public consciousness and speak the truth about it, and urge Americans to say, wait a minute, damaging people is intolerable. And Turkey should definitely be on the agenda of a place where people are being harmed. And it should be the policy of the United States to stand across the way, in the way of that. I do notice that even in the Trump administration, the American system protected Gülen himself. The Turks tried to demand that we turn him over to be prosecuted, and American courts flatly refused. Bulent, despite the picture behind him, just as I'm not in Istanbul, he's not in San Francisco.
We change the position.
But there nevertheless are many refugees from Erdogan who are in the United States. And what we do need and can get is to an official recognition on the part of the American government that people's rights are being violated. They are entitled to asylum here and to the protection of the laws. And I'm in favor of doing all those things and whatever else we can. Not because, although I am, as I say, a friend of Hizmet, not because I'm a friend of Hizmet, but because I'm afraid of anyone who's being persecuted anywhere, which, by the way, is why I'm a friend of Hizmet, because that's who they're opposed to too.
Yeah, another way is that I think what we have experienced in Turkey, in fact, a problem in all across the world. You know, the rising populism is a big problem. A question came actually from a listener, you know, about populism. So the American system could, at least now, push back the populist trend, and it's a big success. But the other parts of the world still under great threat of this racist, anti-immigrant, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, climate denial, kind of populist, authoritarian movements. Even in Sweden, you know, there is a strong racist movement called as Sweden's Democrats, you know. This is based on neo-Nazi movement in Sweden. The Sweden is a good example because the Sweden is governed almost 80% of last 100 years by the labor movement. So social democrat, the society is social democrat and the liberal, but now under the risk of being under the administration of a racist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic movement. The United States is under the same danger, under the danger of white supremacist, Bugolo boys, Proud Boys, Kekistan, and 3%ers, T movement. We can count numbers of them, you know, in just a minute, you know. So it is not an issue, just a issue to supportive for Gülen movement. It is also being supportive to their people's own well-being. The Gülen movement tried everything to stop an authoritarianism in Turkey, but not being successful, unfortunately. But all experts saying that the other nations, Democrats, liberals, who are keen on freedoms, could do much better to stop their own Erdogans, their own Bahçeli's, their own Perinçeks, their own Putins, their own Orbans or Bolsonaro's, you know, through democratic methods. So awareness about what is happening in Turkey is directly related to what will happen about you in your country. It's an example, bad example to learn a lot.
Yeah, it's a single worldwide struggle. And with that agreement, I think we need to sign off at this point. But thank you very much, Dr. Bulent.
I thank you so much, Richard.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bulent, can you stay for a minute? Burhan, did you stop the program on YouTube Live?